All right, let's dive in. This time, you've given us a really interesting set of sources, excerpts from 3 different Italian narratives. We've got iosono.pdf, racconto3.pdf, and one with a pretty lengthy title, Sotto una buona stella, 12,7 by 20, 50, 52 centimeters, 5 by 8.pdf.
Quite the collection.
And at first glance, they seem like completely separate worlds, but as we go through them,
We'll find some surprising connections. I'm always fascinated by that, How seemingly unrelated stories can intertwine.
exactly, it's like a literary puzzle waiting to be solved. So let's get a quick overview. iosono.pdf follows Francesca. A. Well, imagine a woman who's lived 1,000 lives, from rebellious youth to becoming a mother.
And somewhere in there, a shocking act of violence.
Right. Then there's racconto3.pdf. This one introduces us to Giovanna and Ludovica, 2 mothers, each with their own unique approach to, well, to life and motherhood.
Juggling their own lives while raising kids.
Exactly. Very different ways of doing it, though. And finally, we have Sotto una buona stella. This one's a real heartbreaker. It's about a mother dealing with the aftermath of her child's disappearance.
3 very different stories on the surface.
They are. But, and here's the thing, they're not as separate as they seem.
I was going to say, there's got to be a catch.
There is. We've got characters popping up in multiple stories, events in one story that seem to echo in another. And it's all tied together by these relationships, these connections you just don't see coming.
All right, I'm hooked. Where should we start unraveling this web?
Let's start with Francesca in iosono.pdf. She's a fascinating character, full of contradictions. The story begins with her younger years, painting this picture of a rebellious spirit, someone who eventually finds her passion in journalism.
But a lot of her story revolves around her relationship with Eleonora, right?
Right. Eleonora is, how was the text describe her? Yes. Elegante e silenziosa. Elegant and quiet. A stark contrast to Francesca, who's described as, esagerata e spiccata.
Exaggerated and, shall we say, outspoken.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, how did these 2 even become friends? They come from such different worlds.
Opposites attract, I guess. But Eleonora's world, it's full of art, literature. It seems to ground Francesca's chaotic energy.
That's a good way to put it. But their story, it takes a dark turn. And it all centers around that incident at Eleanor's apartment.
Yes, this is where things get intense.
Francesca runs into Farouk and Rebecca at Eleanor's place, and it culminates in this violent act committed by Francesca.
It's not explicitly stated what happened.
No, it's not. But it's clear that this event really scars Francesca. It makes you question, someone who seems so strong, even aggressive.
What could shake her to her core like that?
Right. Instead of dwelling on the specifics of what happened, the story shifts to Francesca's attempts to cover it up and the emotional turmoil that follows.
Which I think is what makes it so compelling. It throws us right into that emotional whirlwind. One minute we're trying to grasp her bond with Eleonora, and the next,
we're dealing with the weight of her actions.
It's like a reflection of real life, wouldn't you say? Unexpected turns, emotional complexities.
Definitely. But that brings us to another piece of this puzzle, racconto3.pdfo. Here, we meet Giovanna and Ludovica, those 2 mothers we mentioned.
And they could not be more different. It's almost comical.
Right. Giovanna is, she's dealing with the joys of menopause.
While trying to wrangle her sons, I think it was.
Yes. Then we have Ludovica, laser focused on controlling every aspect of her daughter Camilla's life. It's fascinating how the story portrays these 2 very different approaches to motherhood.
Giovanna seems to embrace the chaos.
While Ludovica is trying to, maybe eliminate it entirely.
Exactly. But both are facing those universal challenges of parenting in their own way. It's like the story's asking us, what kind of parent are you or would you be?
It definitely makes you think. But here's where the storylines start to intersect, and it all revolves around Enrico.
Giovanna's son.
Yes. He's the link between these stories, and it's Ludovica who sets things in motion. She starts impersonating Enrico in text messages.
Trying to, manage Camilla's social life.
Exactly, and that creates this tangled web of misunderstandings.
And Giovanna, of course, misinterprets those messages.
Oh, completely. She gets it into her head that some male teacher is hitting on her son.
The mama bear instinct kicks in.
Full force. She's determined to protect her cub, and it leads to one of the funniest scenes, honestly. Giovanna, armed with, let's just say, questionable medicine, and aided by her sons.
They stage a stakeout at a bar to confront the supposed professor.
It's hilarious. But there's this underlying tension, too.
Because Giovanna's actions, while, coming from love,
They highlight how easily things can be misinterpreted.
and how quickly a simple text message can spiral out of control.
Exactly. And just when things seem to reach their peak, we're introduced to Blanca, a character who is quite mysterious.
Blanca's true identity, that's a puzzle we'll have to unravel. But before we get lost in that, maybe we should shift gears to Sotto una buona stella. This is where the deep dive takes a more somber turn.
Definitely. This story, it takes us into Isabella's world. A mother struggling to cope with the disappearance of her daughter, Anita. And the story doesn't pull any punches. It shows her raw grief, her despair.
Her struggle to even grasp what's happened.
It's powerful, and it connects back to what we saw with Francesca, too, even though the nature of their trauma is different.
They're both dealing with those long-lasting effects of trauma. Makes you think about resilience and how differently people cope with pain.
Absolutely. But Isabella's story isn't just about her grief. We also meet Stella, a young woman with her own incredibly difficult past.
Her story adds another layer of complexity.
Stella's story is, it's heartbreaking. We learn about her traumatic childhood, her rescue by a homeless woman named Baba, and then her ongoing battle with PTSD at this specialized facility, Villa Clementina.
It's a reminder of that often hidden world of child abuse and the long road to recovery.
And it makes you wonder, could her story hold the key to some of the mysteries surrounding Isabella's loss?
That's what keeps me coming back for more. Just when you think you've got things figured out, another layer's revealed.
Like a giant jigsaw puzzle, right?
Mm-hmm.
With each story offering a crucial piece. And as we delve deeper, a pattern starts to emerge. A pattern of intertwined lives, choices, consequences.
And the power of the past to shape the present.
Exactly. And that's what we'll continue to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
It's like we're peeling back the layers, isn't it? Each story revealing more connections, more complexities.
And those connections, those layers, they really get to the heart of family. Both the bonds that hold us together and the secrets that can tear us apart.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses, is it?
Definitely not. There's conflict, misunderstanding, secrets that can have a real impact.
Like with Giovanna and Ludovica. Their approaches to parenting so different, but both coming from a place of love, a desire to protect.
Even though Ludovica's meddling ends up causing so much chaos.
Well, yeah. But her heart's in the right place, even if her actions have unforeseen consequences, let's say.
It makes you think, have you ever been in a situation where you've tried to do the right thing, but it just backfired?
Oh, absolutely. More times than I care to admit. But it's a good reminder, I think, that even within families, communication is crucial.
Right. We might think we're doing what's best, but if we're not on the same page.
Things can get messy fast. And it's not just about communication within families either. These stories also touch on the importance of communication in a broader sense, being open to different perspectives, questioning your own assumptions.
Being willing to listen to others, even when they see things differently.
Exactly. And speaking of seeing things differently, what about Blanca? Her character, she adds a whole other dimension to this, doesn't she?
She does. She's like,
An enigma. A puzzle.
both. She's observing everyone, but never fully revealing her own motives.
It makes you wonder, what's her role in all of this? What secrets is she holding?
And that's what I love about these stories. Just when you think you've figured things out, a new twist emerges.
It's like a literary treasure hunt, trying to piece together the clues. But it's not just about the plot twists, is it? These stories also force us to confront some pretty tough realities.
They do. Violence, child abuse, grief, mental health struggles, it's all there.
But it's not sensationalized, is what I appreciate. It's handled with realism, empathy.
It makes it all the more impactful.
It does, and it speaks to the skill of these writers, how they tackle these tough subjects with such sensitivity, nuance.
And by doing that, they invite us to really engage with these issues. Think about the impact of trauma, the complexities of human experience.
And the different paths to healing.
And that's something I keep coming back to, the idea of resilience. Even in the face of such pain and loss, the characters find ways to cope, to adapt.
It's inspiring, isn't it? Take Isabella, for example. She's been through the worst a parent could imagine, but she doesn't give up.
She keeps searching, hoping.
And she finds that connection with Stella, which offers a glimmer of, peace amidst the grief.
And Stella's resilience, it's incredible.
Considering what she's endured.
To survive, to heal, to offer support to others who've been through similar trauma.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's hope. There's always the possibility of healing, of finding meaning.
And these stories, they don't just offer hope. They also challenge us to think about the systems, the structures that can perpetuate abuse and neglect.
That's a crucial point. It's not just entertainment, it's raising awareness.
Right. Forcing us to look deeper, to question things, and maybe even consider how we can create a more just and compassionate world.
It's a call to action wrapped in these captivating stories. And as we keep exploring these interconnected narratives,
We start to see a bigger picture emerging, right? This tapestry woven from themes of family, identity, trauma.
resilience, social justice, a tapestry that reflects the human experience in all its messy glory.
Exactly. And it challenges us to really grapple with some of the big questions of our time.
It does. And as we continue to explore, I'm left with a sense of, I don't know, wonder, anticipation.
A bit of both, I think. What will happen to these characters? What truths will be revealed? How will their journeys unfold?
So many questions still unanswered, especially the question of what happens next for Stella and Anita and what that means for Isabella.
It's a question that hangs over everything. Will Isabella discover the truth about Anita's origins?
Will she face the possibility that the child she raised
Might not be her biological daughter.
Mm.
And how will that affect her relationship with Anita, with Marco?
And what about Stella's legacy? Even with her tragic end, will her story inspire others? Will it push Isabella to face the reality of child abuse and advocate for change?
These are questions that linger even after you finish reading.
They do. They make you think about truth, identity, the lasting impact of love and loss.
And that's what a good deep dive should do,
Mm.
right? It's not just about absorbing information. It's about engaging with ideas, grappling with questions.
And coming away with a deeper understanding of ourselves, the world around us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a journey of discovery. And speaking of discovery, let's go back to Francesca for a moment. Remember that incident at Eleanor's apartment?
The one that shook her so deeply.
Yes. It feels like a turning point in her story, something that continues to affect her.
The source material hints that those consequences, they haven't gone away. It's like she's carrying that weight with her, trying to escape it.
It reminds you that our pasts, they can have such a hold on us, even when we try to move on.
And it makes you think, how will she face those demons? How will she find healing?
It's a complex question, right, about the human psyche, how we
Mhm.
deal with trauma.
We all carry wounds, some more visible than others. And sometimes it's those hidden wounds, the ones we try to bury, that have the biggest impact.
It makes you realize how important it is to seek help, to process those difficult experiences, to allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Because you can't truly move forward until you confront your past. And that's a message that runs through all of these stories in different ways. These characters, they're all wrestling with their pasts, searching for meaning, for healing.
And it's in those struggles that we find hope. Reminders that even in darkness, there's a chance for redemption, for second chances, for strength in unexpected places.
Strength in unexpected places. That's a good way to put it. And speaking of unexpected, let's not forget Spyro.
Spyro. He's such a fun character, that gamer who gets caught up in all this.
He brings a lightness to the narrative, a little humor, a reminder that amidst all the chaos and drama,
There's still room for joy, for connection, for a good laugh.
and his connection to the other characters, it just adds another layer of intrigue.
It really does. It speaks to the writer's ability to create a story that's rich and layered, full of humor and drama, mystery and revelation.
And as we head into the final part of this deep dive, I'm just struck by how brilliant these interconnected stories are.
I know. It's amazing how they come together, revealing hidden connections, shared themes.
A deeper understanding of what it means to be human.
And as we get ready to unravel the final threads of this tapestry.
I can't wait to see how it all comes together.
Me neither. But more importantly, what stands out to you, our listener? What questions are you pondering? What connections have you made?
What insights have you gained? Because this deep dive, it's not just about us talking, it's about sparking your curiosity, challenging your assumptions.
Giving you something to think about long after the episode ends.
It's about empowering you to engage with these stories, to draw your own conclusions.
And to keep exploring the world that these stories have revealed.
It's really amazing how these stories just pull you in. You know, they present these characters and they're flawed, they're relatable, and they're entangled in these situations that are extraordinary, but also strangely familiar. And as we've been going through these narratives, I've been thinking a lot about the theme of silence.
Oh yeah, the weight of unspoken truths. Secrets that characters keep hidden. It's like this undercurrent that influences everything.
It really makes you think about the power of what's not said. For some of the characters, silence is a shield.
A way to protect themselves.
Exactly, to protect themselves from pain or judgment, but for others, silence is more like a prison. It traps them in these cycles of fear and guilt.
And it's not just the characters who are affected by it.
Yeah.
Right? Think about us, the readers, the listeners. We have to fill in those gaps.
Yeah, we have to imagine the conversations that never took place, the emotions that were never expressed.
And it's that participation, that process of figuring out the unspoken parts of the story that makes these narratives so thought-provoking.
It really does. It's like the writers are inviting us to have this silent dialogue, a space where we can confront our own experiences with silence and think about how it's impacted us.
It's interesting you say silent dialogue because it's not just about the absence of words.
Right.
It's about the things that go unsaid between family members. It's about the truths that are hidden beneath all these layers of social expectations, the stories that are never shared because of fear or shame.
It makes you wonder, how many untold stories are there right in front of us? How many silences are we all part of just by not asking the questions, by not making space for those stories to be heard?
Which leads us back to that central question of this deep dive: what happens next, especially for Isabella and Stella, and that whole mystery surrounding Anita. Will those silences be broken? Will the truth finally come out?
That's the big question, and the source material leaves it open-ended, which is interesting. On the one hand, you want resolution, you want to know what happens to these characters, how they deal with all these revelations. But on the other hand, the ambiguity keeps you thinking about it long after you've finished reading.
It's like those movie endings that leave you satisfied but also kind of confused.
And isn't that what makes great storytelling so great? You walk out of the theater still piecing it all together.
Totally. And speaking of confronting assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that potential revelation that Anita might not actually be Isabella's biological daughter.
Ooh.
How do you think that would change her whole understanding of motherhood, of family, of her entire life story?
That's huge. It challenges everything she thought she knew about her past, about being a mother, and it brings up so many questions, like, does biology actually define what it means to be a mother? What makes a family? And how do we reconcile the love we feel for someone with the fact that we might be wrong about where they came from?
Those are big questions, and I think they're questions that a lot of people are dealing with these days, even outside of this story. We live in a world where families are so diverse, and the traditional ideas about family are being challenged and redefined.
It makes you wonder if these stories are reflecting something bigger, a growing awareness that family and identity are really complex.
It definitely feels relevant, and I think that's one of the reasons why these stories resonate so much with people. They're tapping into these universal questions about belonging, connection, and that search for truth and meaning in a world that can feel so chaotic.
Yeah, and within all that chaos, those moments of connection, those moments of human connection, even if they're fleeting or unexpected, they become so important. Like, look at the friendship that develops between Giovanna and Ludovica.
Those two, they come from such different worlds,
Yeah, but they're brought together by the shared experience of raising teenagers.
and their scenes together are always so funny.
It's a good reminder that even when things are crazy, human connection can be a source of strength, humor, and comfort.
Yep.
No, you don't have to go through it alone.
And it really highlights the power of empathy.
Right, being able to see the world from someone else's perspective.
It's something we need more of these days, but these stories show us that empathy isn't a weakness. It's actually a strength. It allows us to connect with other people, to understand each other better, and to create a world that's more compassionate and just.
I love that. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What will you take away from these stories? What conversations will they spark in your own life? What truths will you confront? What connections will you make? And what will you do to make the world a little brighter, a little more understanding, a little more just a lot?
Because ultimately the power of these stories comes from how they inspire us to think, to connect, and to take action.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.